during the experience, I kind of had forgotten I'd done a CE5. And then after I'd gotten over this amazing, just once it had sunken in and I'd gotten over what happened, I was like, oh my God, I did a CE5 like just 5 minutes ago or whatever. And I was blown away. And so that was like my first experience.
CE5, or Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, is shorthand for the act of humans initiating contact with ETs through some simple protocols that anyone with an open mind and pure intent can do. The CE5 initiative is a revolutionary global movement that is growing every day. This show is your personal invitation to join this movement and discover contact for yourself. Those who engage in CE5 are cutting-edge ambassadors, ambassadors to other worlds, ambassadors of a new earth, ambassadors of hope. My name is Andre Cardoso, and this program shares the personal stories of CE5 ambassadors from around the world. Today we'll hear from Ben Milne. Ben is a CE5 ambassador who lives in southern New Zealand. I met him at a CE5 expedition in New Zealand and was really struck by his story. I think the simplicity of his process of coming into this work serves as a model for how anyone from any background can successfully initiate contact. He came into it with curiosity, positive intentions, and an open mind about the possibility of having real and meaningful engagement. He also gives a great description of the key process of CE5 called CTS, or Coherent Thought Sequencing. So do pay attention to that if you're interested in following the same process to initiate contact yourself. Just as a side note, there will be some slight audio interference from the wind at a couple of moments during the interview. Now, since CE5 does have a deep meditative and spiritual component to it, I started the interview by asking Ben about his spiritual background and if that had any influence in his coming into this topic.
So I was sort of, I guess you could say, raised Catholic, but we weren't very hardcore into it. But none of us are none of my family are really very spiritual at all when it comes down to it. And I've always sort of felt that there's something much more to reality than what sort of meets the eye. And I guess from an early age I had an interest in the UFO and an ET presence on Earth from some of the early documentaries that were, funnily enough, I remember one that was put out by Disney that I watched when I was a young kid, and I was fascinated by it. At the same time, I was a little bit freaked out about it by the angle that they took with some of the the sort of like the UFO subculture stories and things about contactees being abducted and things like that. So I had that in my mind as a young kid. So to jump forward to when I was about 18, had an experience with a friend. And we saw a flying disc in the middle of the day, which was really sort of like reality-shattering experience for both of us. And that kind of affected me in a way of just sort of opened me up to that there was a lot more out there, just like I suspected. And I was kind of already a believer. Like, it made sense to me with those early documentaries as a kid. It made sense to me that there was that alien presence and that they had this concern about our destructive capabilities, and that made sense to me. So that part of it, and but in terms of spirituality, I think I was just sort of like pretty much an open book, and just was sort of just like open-minded to just sort of. I think I always had a sort of like a thirst to discover more truth about reality.
And when did you first encounter the idea of humans initiating contact with extraterrestrials?
Yeah, okay. Well, that was pretty much, that would have been when I watched the Sirius movie, that was when I first heard about the C5, and yeah, I thought that was a great documentary. I was already sort of like looking into information about UFOs online, and then when I saw that documentary, yeah, it was amazing to me that when I first heard that people were going out and that could actually initiate contact, I sort of thought, oh, could this be true? Surely not. Like, but then I thought, well, I mean, anything's possible. I mean, that's, it's a highly strange thing, and it's like, so, it's like, why not? And then, I was fascinated about what is it actually that they're doing. Like, I knew that they mentioned meditation, but I wanted to know. I had this real. I was fascinated about what is it exactly. How are they using meditation, and what is it that they're doing to be able to make the contact? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I was determined to sort of find out more. So, yeah, I kept on finding YouTube clips of Dr. Greer and some of the videos he'd put out from his training programs and things. Mm-hmm. And yeah, when I heard him describe the CTS, yeah, that was it for me. Like, I was like, okay, so now I'm ready. I've got like the basic gist of how it works, and so I thought I'm going to give that a go sometime. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I did give it a go.
What was that like?
It was great.
How did you kind of go about planning it? Or...
Okay, yeah. Well, actually, it was sort of a spur of the moment thing. I'd been thinking a lot. Like, it'd been sort of consuming my whole thoughts at the time about UFOs and about my previous experiences that I'd had back in the late 90s. And so I was walking my dog at the time at a local park. So it was, there was light pollution, but we just sort of live on the outskirts of town, so it's not too bad. It was a starry night, and I was walking in the park with my dog, and I was just thinking about how to do it, and so I just thought, well, why don't I just give it a go now? No time like the present. So I just stood in the middle of a playing field, and I closed my eyes, and I probably spent about 10 minutes just getting into, like, a complete amateur at meditation. I had no experience with meditation, but I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose, just give it a go. So yeah, I just closed my eyes. I got into the feeling of just trying to imagine the whole universe as a singularity, like just feeling the oneness of consciousness, and just knowing that I was a part of the bigger picture, and that really everything is everything, like all is one. And so I was just getting into that mindset and just sort of really feeling the meditation type experience. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and then I remembered what I remembered back to what I'd heard about the intentions and the attitude towards it, and the CTS. So I went and I decided to go into the CTS, which is like, I projected myself up and imagined myself from above in the field. Mm. And then I just kept on imagining myself as just consciousness, and what New Zealand looks like, and then what it looks like in relation to Australia and the other continents on the globe, and then seeing the globe as a conscious being itself, and seeing the Earth as a beautiful object just there in the blackness of space. And then I just continued on to just, even though I didn't have an exact idea of the solar system, I had a general idea about the planet. So I just sort of made it up as I went along, visualized myself traveling out through the solar system, the various planets that I was aware of. And then when I was sort of out there and sort of seeing I'm a very visual person, so I was quite easy for me to imagine the galaxy as like a moving, breathing thing, like consciousness. It was all conscious. And then at that point I said to myself, for any advanced intelligence that is out there and is aware of me doing this at this time. I said I'm speaking to the intelligence responsible for the craft I've seen in the past. Can you please follow me back and make your presence known to me? I invite you back. And I remembered that I was told that, it's good to ask, if it's safe for you to do so at this time. If you choose to, I invite you back to our beautiful planet. And so at that point, I just went back through into the galaxy, and I just imagined like a point of light as being our star in one of the spiral arms. And I just headed towards that and just locked on and focused on that. And then I came back, and as you can imagine, through the solar system, and then seeing a planet, seeing back to New Zealand, coming right back and seeing myself in the field. And then I opened my eyes, and I thought, well, that was a fun experience. I felt like it was, at the very least, that's got to be good practice. I think it's a good initial start. And I didn't expect anything to happen, and then I actually forgot that I'd done that, and I just continued on my walk with my dog. And as I was looking down the valley, all of a sudden I see a light coming straight towards me. It was flying low, and my initial thought was, wow, look at that. That must be a low aeroplane. Its headlights are coming straight towards me. And as it got closer and closer, I was looking at it and I was thinking, I was just thinking, I was observing it, what is this? And the closer it got, the more I realized there is absolutely no noise. It was completely silent, and there never was a plane. All it was a beautiful light. It was just a light. And when it got to its closest point, like it was coming straight towards me, and then when it got to its closest point, it was basically like kind of above the hills of the on one side of the valley, which was basically up near where I live. And I could see that it was just like a glistening jewel type light that was sort of made up of little like glistening beams of light, and it was sort of like a white color. And then it started fading off. Like when it got to its closest point, I could see how large it was, and it just started fading off. And I thought, well, what's it doing? Like, and I thought it's gonna fade out or disappear, and then it did. It just disappeared, and it vanished into thin air. And I was pretty amazed, and I was like, surely that was a UFO. And I was sort of like asking, was that a UFO? And I turned around and looked into the opposite direction, like kind of like back down the valley to where it came from. And I got 3 very obvious bright flash bulbs. And that was kind of like confirming to me that was a craft responding to. And during the experience, I kind of had forgotten I'd done a CE5. And then after I'd gotten over this amazing, just once it had sunken in and I'd gotten over what happened, I was like, oh my God, I did a CE5 like just 5 minutes ago or whatever. And I was blown away. And like, so that was like my first experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just to clarify, you said flashbulb. What was that like?
It was just like a point of light that came from the sky, like within the darkness of the sky. It wasn't that high up. I mean, it was maybe, I think, 40 degrees elevated.
And it was just like a flashing, like.
Well, so you've got the stars, but it wasn't from any of the stars. It was just like, it was from the darkness. It was just in the dark sky, and it was a bright, obvious flash that was flashed brighter than the brightest star or planet that was in the sky.
Okay.
So it was a point of light.
And it stayed in the same place.
Yeah, it was a stationary flashbulb. So it was a bright flash of light from a point of light. But in between flashes, there was no obvious. It's like it wasn't there. Like, so it was. It was just like it was coming out of nowhere. So, yeah. But maybe it was like an object that was there, and it can turn on and off. As now we now know that they can totally be there, and they can be cloaked, or they can just they're there, and then they can show us that they're there by choosing to flash.
Oh, what an amazing story and just illustrating how simple the process can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm really curious, like what happened from there? Like how have you like?
Well, I just went home with a really glad feeling in my heart and just thought, well, that's amazing. Like, yeah. I think that was a good place to start the interview, actually, with my first experience, because the second experience can really illustrate how strange the situations surrounding the actual sightings can be.
Well, that was Ben's first experience of CE5. He went on to practice the protocols more and has had some even more amazing ET contact, some of which I got to experience with him while out in the field as part of a CE5 working group earlier this year. We're planning for him to be back on a later episode to share more of his story. In the meantime, I hope that this show will encourage you to go out and try initiating a CE5 yourself. To help get you started, you'll find a free guide to the basics of CE5 at CE5podcast.com. You can also contact me at that page for any questions or comments you may have, or to share your own story on a future episode. Now, for a ton of resources and the most definitive information out there on the subject of CE5, disclosure, and all other info underlying the basis for the stories on this show, go to SiriusDisclosure.com. That's SIRIUS disclosure.com. I'm really excited to share that there's also a groundbreaking documentary on the subject currently being produced by that same team, with a release date for fall 2019, or spring if you're south of the equator. To learn more and to help be a part of supporting the crowdfunding of that film, please visit CE5film.com. This show is a real passion project for me, and it's independently run and produced without any paid advertising. If you're thankful that this program exists and would like to support us, please leave a review on your podcast player or go to CE5podcast.com. I'm Andre Cardoso. Thank you for listening to Ambassadors of Hope. Peace and love.